We are back on the road to City Hall, and we turn our attention now to the NYPD and new legislation that's designed to compel the department to provide more information about high-tech surveillance tactics and tools. It's called the POST Act, which is short for Public Oversight of Police Technology. It has received strong pushback from department officials who we heard from on our program last week. Mayor de Blasio also expressed opposition to the bill during our last Mondays with the Mayor segment. Tonight we're going to hear from some of the advocates behind this legislation. Donald Lieberman is Executive Director of the New York Civil Liberties Union. And Michael Price is here from the Brennan Center for Justice, where he serves as counsel for their Liberty and National Security Program. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Let's start with where I think I hope we all agree, which is that the police need to really be on their game, that they need to use as much surveillance as is necessary to detect and deter terrorists, drug cartels, and other bad actors, right?
I think everybody wants to keep the city safe, and that is why the act was specifically designed to provide the amount of transparency that the legislature needs to do its job, that the public needs to understand how the police department is operating, but it doesn't give away the game as far as terrorists and criminals go. And
we're not talking in this instance, at least, of necessarily an abusive use of technology. You're talking about trying to find out what exists.
It's really all about transparency. You know, the council can't exercise its oversight role of the police if they don't know what the police department is doing, you know, and we have found out time and time again that of course we want the police department to use technology. I mean, that's like a no-brainer. But we do want to know you know, what the capabilities are, and we want to know what protections are in place for you and me against the abuse of that technology. Who has access to the stuff that they're gathering? Indeed, what are they gathering? How long are they keeping it? Other agencies? There's a whole array of information that nobody has a clue about. And you know what? The police department would benefit from the public having information about what they're doing with the information that they gather, because, like, maybe there are some good ideas that would come from the council in terms of enabling them to better do their job and helping the public and the police department understand sort of like what capacities these technologies afford and what they don't.
Well, this is the thing I didn't quite understand, is that you know, public oversight means the public. That doesn't necessarily mean you post it on a website. It doesn't necessarily mean you testify about it in open council hearings. You know, a judge is a public official and provides public oversight on sensitive matters. There are panels like the Handshoe Authority that can sort of get into sensitive matters without broadcasting it to the world, right?
Right, and there's a very limited, you know, amount of information that we're asking for. It's the equivalent in privacy terms of an environmental impact statement. We want a privacy impact statement here of what the impact of our individual privacy, right to be left alone, and our information to be left alone based on particular technologies. You know, when we had to file a Freedom of Information request to get information about their cell phone vacuum cleaner.
The Stingray that can sort of pull cell phone information out of the air without dealing with the cell phone companies themselves.
Right, and you know, nobody knew what Stingray technology they were using, and we still don't know whether they're using the Stingray technology that allows you to get just like phone numbers, which is enough, which is really a huge amount of information, because that means they can track every move we make, or are they using the technology that allows them access to our phone calls, the content of our calls, the content of our text messages? Nobody has a clue. Well, you know what? I think New Yorkers have a right to know.
I asked the mayor about this last Monday when I had him on for the Mondays with the Mayor segment. Here's his take, and then I wanted to get your reaction. Let's take a look.
I think we're in balance right now. I think there are real checks and balances. I don't think there's any abuse going on. If there's ever evidence of something new that has to be addressed, I'd be very willing to do it. But I don't agree with the approach that's being outlined. As you said, I think it is way too revealing. But I also don't see evidence of an underlying need that has to be addressed beyond the very meaningful checks and balances already in place as a result of Handshoe.
He seems to be defining checks and balances as, he'll oversee the police department.
I don't think the answer is to wait until there's an abuse, to wait until the next sensational headline. What the Post Act is trying to do is have these conversations about privacy and technology and policing up front, so that the public has an informed, can have an informed discussion about the way that the NYPD is policing us. But I do take exception with the idea that this is information that we shouldn't be putting out there. The Department of Justice has released its guidelines 2 years ago on the use of stingrays. This is the kind of information that we are asking the police department to disclose. It is not something that the Department of Justice feels would harm national security. I don't understand why the police department feels differently.
And NYPD officials said that this was actually a bill that the Brennan Center, your organization, drafted, and that it's more applicable to places like Seattle or, Charleston or some other place, not the #1 terrorist target in the world.
Well, we appreciate the shout out, but I think they're giving us a little too much credit. The council looked at this issue and decided to bring this legislation. It has some similar, there are some similar bills on the West Coast in Oakland and San Francisco and Seattle, but this is tailored to New York City. And unlike some of the other bills that are out there, it doesn't tell the police department what it can or can't do. It requires disclosure, it requires transparency, and within certain limits. So it is not anything out of
what they're saying is that dedicated terrorists will scour this information, read it very closely, and then adopt their attack pattern to avoid
and
it.
What we're saying is that information is already out in the public domain thanks to the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. That's really a straw man. This is a bill that is simply about best practices and letting people know basic information about how their privacy is impacted by the use of technology. We're not asking for any information about where they're using the cell phone towers. We're not asking for information about where ShotSpotter is. We're not asking for information about where the license plate readers are located. The information about the technological options is available in the public domain, and there's no reason that the public in New York and our city council shouldn't have the benefit of that information so that we can make sure that our privacy rights are being adequately protected. Are they just, remember with the video cameras where we had information about somehow police surveillance information being out on porn sadomasochistic websites, the video of somebody committing suicide. I mean, we need to know, and the police department can't get by with trust me. Any government official who says trust me, we know that's a red flag.
Okay, well, we trust that this discussion will continue as the debate continues. Thanks so much for coming in tonight.